My jaw dropped when I read the title of Jonathan Zimmerman's July 12, 2018 opinion article in the San Francisco Chronicle. He wrote, "Abortion is a family value." The professor of education and history at the University of Pennsylvania noted, in 1995, 60% of Americans said abortion should be legal in all or most cases, and 38% said it should be illegal. And last year, a Pew Research poll found almost exactly the same skew. 57% said it should be legal all or most of the time, and 40% thought it should be illegal. Much in this article disturbs me, but these statistics trouble me because a big chunk of these people claim to be Christians. You see, according to Pew Research surveys over the past 10 years, the number of professing Christians has steadily decreased from 77% in 2009 to 67% in 2018. It's no surprise that non-Christians approve of abortion. But do you see the issue with these statistics? 2/3 of Americans today claim to be Christians, while only 40% of Americans think abortion should be illegal. This fundamental moral issue should give us pause. Do we know what the Bible teaches? Have we objectively considered the facts? If there was conclusive evidence from science and Scripture that abortion is the taking of a human life, would you want to know about it? Family values after our song. It's no wonder that so many professing Christians take such a soft stance on abortion. Many of them appear to live in glass houses. According to Guttmacher Institute, 17% of abortion patients in 2014 identified as mainline Protestant, 13% as evangelical Protestant, and 24% as Catholic. 38% reported no religious affiliation, and the remaining 8% reported some other affiliation. I'm reminded of Titus 1:16, where the Apostle Paul wrote, "They profess to know God, but in works they deny him." The controversy surrounding the issue of abortion stems from the many lives impacted by this potential decision. The biblical order of marriage first, children later, has been largely set aside. The June 2011 issue of Obstetrics and Gynecology reports that at least half of American women will experience an unintended pregnancy by age 45, and at current rates, 1 in 10 women will have an abortion by age 20, 1 in 4 by age 30, and 3 in 10 by age 45. In the U.S., over 1 million abortions are performed annually. That's nearly 3,000 every day, 121 every hour. The reasoning surrounding the supposed necessity of abortion rarely involves the health of the mother. The Guttmacher Institute fact sheet from August 2011 reports the reasons women give for having an abortion. 3/4 say they cannot afford a child. 3/4 say having a baby would interfere with work, school, or the ability to care for dependents. And half say they do not want to be a single parent or are having problems with their husband or partner. Before we go any further, let's address a couple of common objections made against addressing this topic at all. Some professing Christians say, don't judge. You need to focus on love, the central issue of Christianity, and not tell others how to live or believe. In making such a statement, an individual decides to be the judge himself. He tells others how they should think and act. Incidentally, when we focus on love, we will be focusing not on mere feelings, but in how we treat others, including unborn infants. Abortion is the most tragic of all human rights violations and the most abhorrent way of despising the little ones Jesus defended. Abortion is age-based discrimination against those little ones yet to be born. How do people try to justify abortion? Some refer to the baby as a blob of tissue. The term fetus is used in part to depersonalize the unborn child. Have you ever asked an expectant mother, when is the fetus due? Even the word fetus, however, though veiled in less common language, points to human life. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines the word fetus as a developing human from usually 2 months after conception to birth. When ultrasound scans determine that an unborn child is female, many in India discriminate against her by terminating the pregnancy. Carl Gerstorfer explains in a CNN article that this gruesome practice presents a societal imbalance that leads to bride trafficking. Quote, census data shows some districts in India have fewer than 800 girls born for every 1,000 boys. China faces a similar problem, largely as a result of the national policy limiting families to having one child. Societal preferences favor having male children. The wealthy want a son to take over the family business, and other prospective parents want a son that can provide for them in old age. People in the United States discriminate against the disabled through abortion. Although there is a small risk of miscarriage, doctors regularly offer expectant mothers an amniocentesis to detect any abnormalities in the unborn child, like Down syndrome or spina bifida. Tragically, when the prenatal test reveals the presence of a Down syndrome child, over 90% of mothers abort their child. For those serious about determining right from wrong on this issue, they must weigh the available evidence on the following question. How far along must the unborn child be before it should be respected as a human life? At 25 days, before the mother even knows she's pregnant, the baby's heart is beating. At 30 days, the baby has a brain of unmistakable human proportions. Eyes, ears, mouth, kidneys, liver, and blood pumping that is often a different blood type than his mother. Can a fetus with a different blood type than its mother and its own heart beating be considered just a part of her body? At 45 days, the baby has measurable brain waves. An individual is declared dead when his heart stops beating and he has no brain activity. So wouldn't a heartbeat and brain activity constitute human life? All abortions take place after the baby has a heartbeat and brainwave activity. We need to teach our children that those lives are precious. The Almighty declares in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 39, God speaking, "It is I who put to death and give life." The Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6, "Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for in the image of God he made men." The following account may not be suitable for all viewers, but should be heard to understand the gruesome reality of these life-taking procedures. Former abortionist Dr. David Brewer describes his first encounter with abortion. "I opened the sock up and put it on the towel, and there were parts in there of a person. I'd taken anatomy. I was a medical student. I knew what I was looking at. There was a little scapula, and there was an arm, and I saw some ribs and a chest, and I saw a little tiny head, and I saw a piece of a leg, and I saw a tiny hand. I checked it out, and there were 2 arms and 2 legs, 1 head, etc. And I turned and said, 'I guess you got it all.' It was pretty awful that first time. It was like somebody put a hot poker into me." These descriptions evoke strong emotions, but in addition to the personal accounts of physicians, we can also access the medical and biblical facts demonstrating that abortion takes a human life. Consider the testimony of embryology textbooks. The Developing Human, Clinically Oriented Embryology, 6th edition, Moore and Prasad, quote, "The zygote results from the union of an oocyte and a sperm. A zygote is the beginning of a new human being." Human Embryology, 3rd edition, by Bradley M. Patton, quote, "It is the penetration of the ovum by a spermatozoon and resultant mingling of the nuclear material each brings to the union that marks the initiation of the life of a new individual. Biological Principles and Modern Practice of Obstetrics by Greenhill and Friedman, quote, "The zygote thus formed represents the beginning of a new life." In the current draft of its 2018 through 2022 strategic plan, drafted during the Obama administration, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services defines life as beginning at conception. The draft reads, "HHS accomplishes its mission through programs and initiatives that cover a wide spectrum of activities, serving and protecting Americans at every stage of life, beginning at conception." In a March 2017 article titled "When Human Life Begins," the American Association of Pediatricians, quote, "The predominance of human biological research confirms that human life begins at conception, fertilization." A 2014 research brief on the scientific view of when life begins, published by the Charlotte Lozier Institute, stated, quote, "The conclusion that human life begins at sperm-egg fusion is uncontested, objective, based on the universally accepted scientific method of distinguishing different cell types from each other, and on ample scientific evidence, thousands of independent, peer-reviewed publications. Moreover, it is entirely independent of any specific ethical, moral, political, or religious view of human life or of human embryos." In 1981, a U.S. Senate Judiciary Subcommittee received the following from medical experts. Professor Micheline Matthews Roth of Harvard University Medical School, quote, "It is incorrect to say that biological data cannot be decisive. It is scientifically correct to say that an individual human life begins at conception." Dr. Alfred M. Bongianni, professor of pediatrics and obstetrics at the University of Pennsylvania, quote, "I have learned from my earliest medical education that human life begins at the time of conception." Dr. Jerome Lejeune, professor of genetics at the University of Descartes, "After fertilization has taken place, a new human being has come into being. It is no longer a matter of taste or opinion. It is plain experimental evidence. Each individual has a very neat beginning at conception. Professor Jaime Gordon of the Mayo Clinic, quote, "By all the criteria of modern molecular biology, life is present from the moment of conception." Dr. Watson Bowes, University of Colorado Medical School, quote, "The beginning of a single human life is, from a biological point of view, a simple and straightforward matter. The beginning is conception." The conclusion of the official Senate report reads, quote, "Physicians, biologists, and other scientists agree that conception marks the beginning of the life of a human being, a being that is alive and is a member of the human species. There is overwhelming agreement on this point in countless medical, biological, and scientific writings." Even if overwhelming evidence did not exist in the medical community, but only reasonable doubts about whether the baby in the womb is a living being, would you say, "We're not absolutely sure, so just go ahead and abort"? Some people make an ugly compromise. They say, "I'm against abortion, but I'm pro-choice. I believe a mother should have the right to decide for herself." That's like being pro-choice when it comes to child abuse. What would you think of someone who opposes child abuse while believing each parent should have the right to choose? This is similar to the person who says, "Don't legislate morality." What? Isn't it legislating morality when we make laws against stealing or drunk driving? Of course it is. Aren't all laws about legislating morality, about enforcing consequences for those who do wrong? What about abortion to save the life of the mother? First of all, only about 1% of all abortions are performed to save the mother's life. In nearly every case, the baby can be taken by C-section, and both mother and child can be spared. The late Dr. C. Everett Koop, the United States Surgeon General under President Reagan, said in his 38 years as a pediatric surgeon that, quote, he was never aware of a single situation in which a preborn life had to be taken to save the life of the mother, end quote. The late Dr. Alan Guttmacher of Planned Parenthood, the leading provider of surgical abortions in the United States, acknowledged, today it is possible for almost any parent to be brought through pregnancy alive unless she suffers from a fatal illness such as cancer or leukemia, and if so, abortion would be unlikely to prolong, much less save, life. What about abortion after a horrible experience of rape or incest? When a woman endures such a painful experience, it rightfully generates deep sympathy for the victim. But do the physical, mental, and emotional wounds associated with rape or incest justify the terminating of the resulting pregnancy? First of all, understand that the Guttmacher Institute says just over 1% of all abortions are due to rape or incest. In addressing whether it is right to abort a child conceived through rape or incest, Gregory Kukul says in his book Tactics, "Let me see if I understand. Let's just say I had a 2-year-old child standing next to me who had been conceived as a result of incest. On your view, it seems, I should have the liberty to kill her. Is that right?" Violence against the mother does not justify violence against the baby. There's not even a death penalty for the rapists themselves. No adverse circumstances for one human being change the nature and worth of another human. Solomon lists hands that shed innocent blood among the 7 abominations of Proverbs 6:16 through 19. We shudder at Manasseh, who filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, 2 Kings 24:3 and 4. And at the Holocaust in Jeremiah 7:31 and 32, where God says the people, as an offering to false gods, burned their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command, God says, nor did it come into my heart. We recoil when we read of Pharaoh ordering every newborn Hebrew male to be thrown into the river. Exodus 1, verse 15 through 22. Or when we read of Herod putting a hit out on baby Jesus. Herod ordered the massacre of all male children, Matthew 1:16, in Bethlehem and all its districts from 2 years old and under. But when you compare the numbers, Herod and Pharaoh are small potatoes compared to the United States. Does the Bible declare life starts well before birth? Yes. Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one form us both within our mothers? Job 31:15. Jeremiah 1, verse 5. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before you were born, I set you apart. The Bible speaks of John the Baptist before he was born, toward the end of the second trimester, quote, for indeed, as soon as the voice of your greeting sounded in my ears, the babe leaped in my womb for joy. Luke 1:44. The Greek word here for baby, brephos, is the same word used to describe, number one, baby Jesus after he was born, Luke 2, verse 12 and 16. Number two, the babies brought to Jesus for his blessing, Luke 18:15 through 17. And three, the newborn babies killed by Pharaoh, Acts 7:19. Jesus rebuked his antagonistic detractors. You were of your father, the devil. He was a murderer from the beginning, John 8:44. Satan hates children as much as Jesus loves them. Where do you fall on the continuum? With Jesus on the loving children end and the devil on the hating children end? Are you neutral, unsure, somewhere in the middle? Martin Niemöller wrote in the wake of the Jewish Holocaust in Germany, first they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Once the sanctity of life is rejected, there is no limit to the depths of depravity to which man may descend. We hope you'll stay with us for closing words after our song.
All hail the power of Jesus' name, let angels prostrate fall. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. He chosen seed of Israel's race, he ransomed from the fall. Hail him who saves you by his grace and crown him Lord of all. Hail him who saves you by his grace and crown him Lord of all. Let every kindred, every tribe on this terrestrial wall, to him all majesty ascribe and crown him Lord of all. To him all majesty ascribe and crown him Lord of all. Oh, that with yonder sacred throng we at his feet may fall. We'll join the everlasting song and praise him, Lord of all. We'll join the everlasting song and praise him, Lord of all.
We certainly have compassion for those who have gotten themselves in a very difficult situation. In John chapter 8, we read about a woman who was caught in adultery, and the Pharisees, it seemed like, were anxious to see her stoned. And when they asked the question to Jesus, what should we do with her? Jesus responded, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, "Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." So if you've been guilty of this wrong, you certainly are eligible for forgiveness. And that's a wonderful reason to become a Christian if you have not. And if you're a Christian, you yet can have forgiveness for making such a mistake. And we hope you'll consider this carefully. We thank you for watching Let the Bible Speak. Please contact us for a free copy of 1158, Family Values, or our free study guide on inspiration, or the study guide on A Better Covenant. Visit letthebiblespeak.com to review video, audio, and transcripts of over 400 Bible messages. Please do us a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch the new sermon every week at your convenience. Finally, we echo the sentiment of the Apostle Paul when he wrote in Romans 16, verse 16, "The churches of Christ salute you." Until next week, goodbye, and may God bless you.